Jeff the Killer Part 2. I assume it's the sequel to the first Jeff the Killer because of the Part 2, but there's a lot of Jeff the Killer stories, so I might be wrong about this, but whatever. This time the story centers around three new characters, Dan, Bill, and Sandra. They go looking in a warehouse. Yeah, apparently there's all these stories about how people go in and don't come out. And in one instance, a kid came out with cuts and scratches up his arms and on his shoulders, along with a black eye. When the kid said what it was, he apparently was sent to an insane asylum. Dan wants to find out what the people are talking about, and Bill and Sandra think he's nuts. It really reminds me of something like the beginning of a 80s horror movie, which is pretty awesome. Well, anyhow, Dan grabs a camera and a cell phone out the back of the car and bribes Bill and Sandra into joining him by saying that he won't give them a lift home if they don't go into the warehouse with him. So of course they accept. They get pissed, but they accept. Dan fiddles around with the lock with a screwdriver. They go inside and find nothing but dark at first. Dan pulls out a light and the camera and says that he's going to go look for a basement while Bill and Sandra go off and explore the warehouse a bit. Dan finds two gate doors and uses the screwdriver to open them and then starts going down the stairs. He stops at the second step and sees a bunch of carvings in the wall. We know who did it, and I'm pretty sure if Dan had known, I'm willing to bet he'd have ran out the warehouse like his ass was on fire. But he doesn't, so he continues to go down the steps. He slips and falls down the stairs and lands in some strange liquid. At first, he doesn't know what it is, but after managing to find a light switch, he discovers that it's blood. He also sees a bunch of pictures of kids, some happy, some sad, and others dead, and in some cases disembodied. It's pretty disgusting. Quite the picture I'm painting right now, huh? No pun intended. Well, it gets worse. Shortly after seeing this, Dan finds the mutilated bodies of children. This causes him to vomit and cry, and not long after he starts, he hears footsteps. At first he thinks it's Bill and Sandra, but oh shit, it's Jeff. Needless to say, Jeff kills him. Bill and Sandra start to notice that Dan's been gone a long time, an hour to be exact. Bill goes looking for him and leaves Sandra all by herself. Jeff starts creeping around Sandra, which she mistakes for Dan. After hollering at him for a bit, Jeff comes out and delivers a very haunting monologue about the difference between fake terrors and real terrors. To put it in a nutshell, it's pretty damn haunting. Sandra tries to escape, but Jeff tackles her and puts a knife in her back, which, of course, kills her. Bill hears her scream and runs back to her, only to find her dead. Horrified at the sight, he drops to his knees and starts crying. Literally seconds after, Jeff comes out and says some shit. Bill grabs the knife and attempts to stab him, but Jeff grabs and twists his wrist, reminiscent of the first Jeff the Killer. Long story short, Bill tries to fight but is not successful at all. That is, except for a kick to Jeff in the nuts. Jeff delivers another monologue about how he'll never be locked up and that he's saving Bill from those who will judge him and view him as less for being different. Pretty freaky stuff. This Jeff the Killer story is nothing short of enjoyable. As I said before, it plays out like an 80s horror movie, specifically a slasher film. It plays off of the horror cliches that usually happen in slasher films, which only made it feel more authentic. I guess Dan, Bill, and Sandra never saw a Scream. If they had, maybe their fates would have been different, but if that was the case, then there would be no story. Both monologues that Jeff delivers are very haunting, and I actually found them both to be interesting. It gave the character more depth, which is always a good thing. Overall, Jeff the Killer Part 2 is a pretty damn good creepypasta. I highly recommend it to anyone that's in the mood for a good horror story. Check in tomorrow for my review of Jane the Killer. Yeah, that's right, I'm going to do something a little different this time. This is Cujo06241, signing out.